The unraveling confrontation. The evening air was crisp as Eleanor sauntered through the upscale district, the imitation purse wrapped in a luxurious silk scarf and nestled securely under her arm. The allure of the purse still had a peculiar charm, though she had tried to move past her indulgent ways. At a cafe, she spotted Julian and Henry engaged in a heated discussion by a corner table. Julian was animatedly gesticulating, his frustration evident, while Henry appeared equally agitated, his face flushed with intensity. Eleanor's heart skipped a beat. She had not anticipated running into them. "Julian, Eleanor," he exclaimed, his eyes widening with recognition. Could it be?" His head locking onto Eleanor, with a mixture of surprise and intrigue. "Eleanor, what a surprise," he said, his voice dripping with feigned charm. "And I see you're carrying." Julian's eyes darted toward the purse, barely concealed by the silk scarf. "Is that the purse, the one that's been causing all this trouble?" He took a step forward, his hand reaching out almost instinctively. Eleanor listened in panic. She had been so absorbed in her thoughts that she had not realized how obvious the purse had become. Her mind raced as she tried to regain her composure. "Oh, this old thing. I just found it," she stammered. "I wasn't really sure what to do with it." "Found it, you say? I've been meaning to get my hands on that for a while now. It's quite the piece." Narrowed as he stepped closer, his tone sharp. "Meaning to get your hands on it? Henry, you had it after I lost it. You've had it, and didn't even know its worth. I should be the one to have it." Up with an almost smug confidence. "I was actually thinking more about what the purse represents. You see, Julian, I'm willing to offer something far more valuable than mere money." "Oh, and what could that possibly be?" Henry happened as he looked at Eleanor, a glimmer of sincerity in his expression. "I'm willing to offer love. True, heartfelt affection. I know it sounds strange, but the purse..." He paused, glancing at the imitation with a thoughtful frown. "It's not just a possession, it's a symbol. And what better way to show its value than through something as profound as love?" Decisively. "Love? Are you serious? This thing isn't about love, it's about power and influence." Grew as the conversation continued. "Henry, I appreciate the sentiment, but the purse, it's not really capable of granting love. It's just an object." Slightly, but he quickly recovered with a forced smile. "Well, I suppose you're right. Still, it's a gesture worth considering. I'll offer it anyway. Surely it's worth something, even if it can't grant love." Julian, clearly unimpressed. "I think you're missing the point. I had the purse first and I'm willing to pay in cash. Money is something it can actually accommodate." They're bickering, their voices rising in a cacophony of competing demands. In frustration, "I had that purse first. I should be the one to have it, no matter who had it afterward." Repetitive fervor. "Oh, please, I was the one who was able to make use of it after you. I should have it, not you. Even if it means giving a gesture of love." All over their arguing, Eleanor tried. "I really don't know." Fever pitch as Henry exchanged increasingly harsh words. Their heated exchanges grew more personal and vitriolic. The scene quickly escalated from verbal sparring to a physical confrontation. His anger boiling over. "You're nothing but a pretentious fraud. You think you can win the purse with your phony romantic nonsense." His face contorted with rage. "And you're a pathetic fool clinging to cash like it means anything. The purse deserves more than your shallow offers." Julian threw a punch. Henry staggered back but quickly retaliated. The cafe patrons looked on in shock as the two men engaged in a full-blown fistfight. Punches were thrown, chairs were knocked over, and tables were overturned as Julian and Henry battled fiercely for the purse and Eleanor. Eleanor decided she had had enough. With a mix of anxiety and resolve, she slipped away from the scene, her heart pounding. She cast one last glance back at the uproarious scene as she fled from the cafe. Eleanor glanced back one last time, her heart racing. The sight of Julian and Henry engaged in a fierce fight over the purse while she was barely able to see who was winning made her realize the absurdity of the situation. The imitation purse had driven the men to physical violence and turmoil. As she left the purse behind. Julian, managing to get the upper hand in the fight, stumbled over the purse lying on the floor. Seeing it, he grabbed it with a victorious grin, his face a mix of triumph and relief. The fight had left him battered but determined, and he clutched the purse as his prize. Older than as Eleanor walked away, leaving the scene of chaos behind. The purse, now in Julian's possession, was a testament to the madness it had caused. The tumultuous evening had exposed the greed and conflict it had ignited, and Eleanor knew that the allure of the purse had only revealed the deeper turmoil within all who had sought to possess it. Chapter 21. The inevitable reckoning. The morning sun cast a pale light through the windows of Julian's opulent townhouse, its glow warming the ornate furniture and casting long shadows across the polished floors. Julian, nursing a hangover from the previous night's chaos, lounged in his luxurious study, idly examining the imitation purse that had sparked such turmoil. The was abruptly interrupted by a firm knock on the door. Julian's eyes narrowed with irritation as he rose from his chair and approached the entrance. He opened. Lydia standing there, impeccably dressed as a police constable. Her uniform was meticulously pressed, and her demeanor was as authoritative as it was cold. Julian's surprise quickly turned to apprehension. "Julian," Lydia said, her voice smooth and professional, "I'm here to inform you that you are under arrest for your involvement in the recent altercation with Mr. Henry." Widened. "Arrest? Are you serious? What for?" Lyd, her gaze sweeping the room with practiced precision. "The altercation at the cafe last night. Disturbing the peace and engaging in a public brawl. We've received several complaints." Mounted. "This is absurd. I didn't start the fight. I was simply defending myself." Lydia remained unmoved. "That may be the case, but the matter requires official handling. I'll need to take the purse as evidence." The imitation purse, resting innocently on a nearby table. He grabbed it and handed it to Lydia with a begrudging sigh. "Fine. Take it. I'm not sure how this trinket is going to help with the charges against me." Lydia, with a nod. "Thank you. We'll make sure it's properly logged as evidence." To leave, she as her phone and dialed a number. After a few rings, Eleanor answered. "Hello." Eleanor's voice was cautious. Miss began, her tone deceptively warm. "I wanted to let you know that the purse has been recovered and is now in our custody. You can pick it up at your convenience." There was on the other end. "Thank you, but I think I'll pass. I'm not interested in it any." Lydia eased slightly, though her expression remained composed. "Very well. If you change your mind, the offer still stands." With Lydia ended the call and turned her attention back to Julian. "Since Miss Eleanor is unwilling to claim it, we will be offering the purse to Mr. Henry as restitution for the conflict." Crimson. "You can't be serious. After everything, you're just giving it to him?" Lydia, wavering. "It's a matter of resolving the dispute. Mr. Henry's involvement in the fight warrants compensation, and the purse is deemed appropriate for this purpose." Bubbled over. "This is outrageous. I fought for that purse and now you're just handing it over." Lydia remained calm. "It's the decision of the authorities. You're welcome to contest it through legal channels, but for now, this is the resolution." Exited the townhouse, leaving Julian seething in frustration. The imitation purse was a small but significant symbol of the turmoil that had unraveled over the past few days. Henry arrived at the police station, an imposing figure ensconced in a wheelchair, his body wrapped in casts from the violent altercation with Julian. The once proud and resolute Henry now bore the marks of his struggle, his eyes reflecting a mixture of determination and discomfort. Lydia, with a mixture of sympathy and professionalism. "Mr. Henry," she greeted, her tone warm yet controlled. "I'm pleased to see you've come for the purse." Strained smile. Henry glanced at the imitation purse, now carefully placed in a display case. "Yes, well, I'm here to collect my prize." Lydia transferred the purse from the case to Henry's lap. He tried to grasp it, but the casts restricted his movements. Despite his best efforts, he could only look at it, longingly. "Seem properly at the moment," Henry remarked with a wry smile. but at least it's here with me. Lydia lit slightly as she observed Henry's struggle. I'm glad to see you're getting what you've earned. I hope it brings you the satisfaction you sought. Henry, the purse, his sense of triumph clear. It's been quite a journey. I never imagined it would end up like this, but I'm grateful for the chance to have it. Henry, with his departure, he wheeled himself out of the police station, the imitation purse resting on his lap. Despite his triumph in reclaiming it, he couldn't fully touch or appreciate its significance due to his injuries. Chapter 22. Fantasies of Retribution. Henry's room, an oasis of beige monotony, contained only the essentials: a wheelchair, a bed, and a solitary display case. The imitation purse, within its glass prison, seemed to mock him from a distance. Immobilized by casts and confined to the wheelchair, Henry's imagination was the only thing that roamed freely. His musings grew darker, intertwining his thoughts of revenge with more primal desires. As his frustration morphed into a more fervent obsession, his voice, filled with a mix of bitterness and lust, broke the silence. Julian, you fool. You don't realize what you've done. Once I get my hands on that purse again, not only will you face public humiliation, but I'll also revel in the pleasures it will bring me. Took a more decadent turn. The purse is more than just a symbol of victory, it's a gateway to indulgence, a magnet for all the carnal delights I've been deprived of. I'll use it to attract the most alluring and captivating individuals. People will flock to me, enchanted by the aura of opulence and allure it radiates. Grand scenarios. Picture it, a lavish party, filled with the finest and most beautiful people, all drawn to the spectacle of the purse. I'll be the center of attention, the object of desire and admiration. The purse will serve as a beacon, calling forth the most glamorous and seductive individuals. Henry, with unrestrained lust. Every glance, every flirtatious comment, will be directed at me. The purse will be my ticket to a world of sensual pleasures. Beautiful women, dashing men, everyone will want a piece of the glory that the purse symbolizes. I'll be the embodiment of desire and indulgence. His expression intense as he continued. Imagine the intimate encounters, the passionate rendezvous. The purse will be the catalyst for all the experiences I've longed for. I'll be able to indulge in every fantasy, every decadent whim. The purse will be my ultimate aphrodisiac, attracting all the pleasures I've ever desired. Ran wild with possibilities. I'll have a string of lovers, each one more enchanting than the last. I'll host exclusive gatherings, where the crème de la crème will vie for my attention. The purse will ensure that I'm at the center of every tantalizing affair. I'll live a life of unrivaled hedonism, all thanks to this magnificent artifact. Increasingly lascivious, the very presence of the purse will transform me into an object of irresistible allure. Every touch, every glance will be laden with desire. The purse will enhance my every experience, making each moment more electrifying and indulgent. He sighed in his fantasies. Oh, the carnal delights that await me. The purse will be my key to a life of unbridled passion and luxury. Every fantasy will become reality, every desire will be fulfilled. Julian, you've set the stage for my ultimate gratification, and you don't even know it. Henry's voice leaving him in silence, with only the soft hum of the room to accompany his dark imaginings. The imitation purse, now a symbol of both vengeance and unrestrained lust, rested in its case, a silent testament to Henry's hopes and desires. The beige walls seemed to close in around him, but his mind continued to soar, plotting revenge and relishing in fantasies of carnal pleasure. As Henry's dreams grew more elaborate and intense, each fantasy a reflection of his desperate longing and unfulfilled desires. The purse remained a tantalizing promise of both retribution and indulgence, a beacon of hope amidst the confinement of his reality. Chapter 23. The Final Showdown. Julian's footsteps echoed ominously in the quiet hallway of Henry's apartment as he approached. The once opulent space was now a shadow of its former self, dominated by the sight of Henry, immobilized in a wheelchair covered in casts. Julian's face was etched with desperation, his pride now eclipsed by his need for redemption. Henry carried a pleading edge. I need your help. I know I've made mistakes, but I'm begging you, please let me borrow the purse. His eyes narrowed with suspicion. Why should I trust you now, after everything that's happened? comfortably, his frustration barely contained. Because I'm desperate. I need to show that I'm still relevant, that I haven't lost everything. This is my last chance to restore my reputation. Still reluctant. Why should I help you? You've done nothing but cause trouble. Hardened as he stepped closer. Look, I'm at the end of my rope. You're not even using the purse. You're stuck here, unable to move. It's just sitting there gathering dust. I need it. Let me use it, or I swear I'll make sure you regret it. A mix of anger and fear. Julian had cornered him, leveraging his vulnerability. With a reluctant sigh, Henry relented and gestured to the display case. Fine, take it. But don't expect me to help you if things go wrong. Julian retrieved the purse, his hands trembling with both excitement and anxiety. As he held it in his hands, a gleam of satisfaction crossed his face. Thank you. You won't regret this. Time. With the purse clutched tightly, he hurried out of Henry's apartment, determined to make a grand entrance at the high society event he had planned. The evening sky was dimming, and the city lights shimmered as Julian arrived at the gala, his heart pounding with anticipation. In the venue, Julian made a dramatic entrance, the imitation purse held aloft for all to see. He navigated through the crowd, trying to soak in the admiration he imagined would follow. However, as Julian approached, Eliza, who had been sipping a glass of champagne, spotted the purse and let out a dismissive laugh. "Purse is," Eliza called out, loud enough for those nearby to hear. Her tone was mocking, and the crowd began to murmur, eyes turning toward Julian. Julian crimson as the realization hit him. Eliza's comment had struck a nerve, and the once dazzling purse now seemed to mock him. The guests began to snicker, their amusement evident as they whispered among themselves. The humiliation deepened as he tried to defend himself. "No, it's the real deal, it's authentic." The more the crowd's laughter grew, Julian's attempts to salvage his dignity were futile. Enraged and embarrassed, he stormed out of the event, the purse clutched tightly in his hand. The echoes of laughter followed him as he made his way back to Henry's apartment. The place was flung open with a force that rattled the hinges. Julian barged in, the imitation purse held menacingly in front of him. Julian's voice was a mix of fury and desperation. "What's the meaning of this? You gave me a fake purse." Henry, Julian's sudden and aggressive reappearance, stared at him with confusion. "What are you talking about? It's the same purse you took." Contorted with anger. "It's not real." Eliza pointed it out at the event. "Everyone laughed at me. I need answers, and I need them now." Henry, aware of the true nature of the purse, was defensive. "I didn't know it was fake. I thought it was genuine. How was I supposed to know?" Julie rolled over. "You should have known. You should have checked it. Now I'm the laughingstock and I demand to know why you sold me out." Guard struggled to find a response. "I didn't sell you out. I'm just as much a victim in this mess. I thought I was getting a real deal too." Seething with anger, threw the purse onto the floor, its impact muffled by the plush carpet. "I'm done with this. I'll find out who's responsible for this mess and make them pay." Leaving the imitation purse behind, Henry's gaze followed him, a mix of anger and regret clouding his features. The purse lay on the floor, a symbol of broken promises and shattered reputations. Henry, still immobilized, could only watch as Julian's rage faded into the night, leaving the future uncertain and fraught with tension. Chapter 24. A deadly confrontation. Henry's anger and frustration were palpable as he maneuvered his wheelchair through the dimly lit streets. The weight of his injuries and the confinement of his casts seemed almost insurmountable, but his determination was fueled by a single burning thought: revenge. The imitation purse, which had been his sole consolation, now represented betrayal and deceit. Henry clenched the gun tightly in his hands, the metal cold and heavy, as he wheeled through the night. His desk was clear, Julian's apartment. Henry had pieced together that Julian had been the one to swap out the real purse with a forgery, and the injustice of it gnawed at him. The anger that simmered within him had finally reached a boiling point, and he was resolved to confront Julian. Julian's building, the scene was eerily quiet. Henry's heart pounded as he approached the door, the gun still gripped tightly. He raised his hand and knocked, his breaths coming in heavy, uneven gasps. His voice was low, full. "Open the door. We need to talk." Julian, restlessly inside, finally opened the door, his face a mask of surprise and irritation. "Henry? What are you doing here?" Response. Henry pushed past Julian into the apartment. The dim light of the room highlighted his intense gaze and the glint of the gun. What the? Julian's voice was laced with confusion and fear as he took in the sight of Henry in his wheelchair, the gun aimed steadily at him. "This is out," Henry shouted, his voice cracking with emotion. "You swapped out the real purse for a fake one while you were borrowing it. I trusted you, and you betrayed." As the realization of Henry's accusation sunk in. "Henry, listen to me, I didn't." "Lie," Henry interrupted, his voice a raw shout. "I know it was you. You took advantage of my condition and replaced the purse. You've ruined everything." Julian's in a futile gesture of defense. "Henry, I swear I didn't." Had eclipsed all reason. His hand shook, but he aimed the gun unwaveringly at Julian. "This is for everything you've done to me. You thought you could get away with it, but you're wrong." "Henry," Julian pleaded, stepping back as fear gripped him. "You don't have to." Finish his sentence, but Henry's finger tightened on the trigger. The shot echoed through the apartment, a sound that seemed to shatter the night's stillness. Julian's body jerked as the bullet struck him, and he fell to the floor, a look of shock and pain etched on his face. Henry in ragged gasps as he stared down at Julian's lifeless form. The reality of what he had done began to sink in, but the rage and betrayal still clouded his judgment. He took one last look at Julian and wheeled himself out of the apartment, the gun still in his hand, his mind reeling from the act of violence he had committed. Dawn began. As they began to creep over the city, Eliza sat in her living room, flipping through channels absent-mindedly. Her gaze was drawn to a news bulletin that flashed across the screen, and her heart sank as she saw Julian's name. Local man shot dead in a dispute over stolen goods. Was somber the number as they reported on the incident. Eliza's hands trembled as she heard the details of the shooting, including the involvement of Henry, who was still at large. The realization that her comment about the purse had inadvertently led to Julian's death weighed heavily on her. Eliza whispered, her voice trembling with guilt. "It was my fault. If I hadn't said anything." Then to cover the unfolding drama, but Eliza could barely process the words. Her mind was consumed with the horrific realization that her offhand remark had set off a chain of events that culminated in Julian's tragic death. As the reality of the situation settled over her, she could only sit in stunned silence, knowing that she had played an unintentional but pivotal role in the night's grim events. Chapter 25. The Burden of Guilt. The morning sun streamed through the curtains of Eliza's opulent apartment, casting a warm glow on the elegant furnishings. Yet, despite the tranquility of her surroundings, Eliza was anything but peaceful. She sat in her plush armchair staring blankly at a small coffee table adorned with tasteful decor. The usual beauty of her home did nothing to soothe the turmoil churning inside her. Of guilt and regret. The news of Julian's death had hit her like a thunderclap, and now, the weight of her actions, or rather, her words, pressed heavily on her. The faintest hint of a smile was a distant memory as she grappled with the reality that her offhand comment had led to such a tragic outcome. Felt the empty space where the purse had once been. She had lost interest in it after the auction debacle and let it slip from her thoughts. But now, that seemingly insignificant object had become the fulcrum of an unimaginable tragedy. She could almost hear Julian's desperate pleas, see his face contorted in disbelief as he fell victim to Henry's wrath. Eliza her face in her hands, her fingers gripping her hair as though trying to pull the thoughts from her mind. "If only I had kept that damn purse," she muttered to herself. "Maybe things would have turned out differently." In her mind, Henry's rage, the sound of the gunshot, and Julian's lifeless form crumpling to the floor. Each image was a stab of remorse, each scene a reminder of how her casual remark had set off a catastrophic chain of events. Walked she to the large window overlooking the city, her reflection staring back at her from the glass. The morning light felt harsh and unfeeling, a stark contrast to the turmoil she felt inside. She closed her eyes, trying to shut out the world and focus on the inner conflict that plagued her. The purse seemed like a frivolous luxury, an object of superficial desire. Now, it was a symbol of everything she wished she could undo. Eliza's thoughts spiraled into dark places, imagining how the purse could have been used to change the course of events. She envisioned herself intervening in the conflict, keeping the purse out of the hands of those who would misuse it. But those were fantasies. Real life was not so easily altered. Her movements restless, her heart ached with the realization that she had become entangled in a mess far beyond her control. Her emotions oscillated between anger at Julian for being so vain and angry at herself for not recognizing the danger sooner. She whispered bitterly. If only I had realized what was at stake, if only I hadn't been so careless. Her shelf filled with trinkets and trophies, symbols of her past triumphs and successes. None of them brought her any comfort now. The luxury and prestige that once defined her seemed hollow in the face of the guilt she felt. As Eliza found herself unable to focus on anything else, she sat down at her vanity, her reflection looking back at her with a mix of disdain and self-loathing. Her elegant appearance seemed a cruel irony, in light of the internal chaos she experienced. What now? She asked herself, her voice cracking. How do I live with the knowledge that I played a part in all this? Interrupted by a knock at the door. She knew it was likely someone with news or inquiries about the recent events, but she had little energy or desire to face them. Instead, she sat motionless, her eyes still locked on her reflection, searching for answers that seemed just out of reach. Distant companion, a shadow she could not escape. Eliza's longing for the purse had transformed into a deeper, more painful regret. She wished for the chance to turn back time, to undo the consequences of her actions, but all she had left were the haunting echoes of a fatal misstep. Chapter 26. Lydia's dark command. The luxurious elegance of Lydia Nightshade's penthouse apartment stood in stark contrast to the dark deeds she was about to undertake. The grand space, with its opulent decor and lavish furnishings, provided a fitting backdrop for the sinister rituals Lydia was preparing. The real, accursed purse sat on a polished mahogany table, its presence both alluring and ominous under the soft glow of a chandelier. Lydia's sleek black gown that flowed like liquid shadows moved with a grace that belied the malevolent intent in her heart. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, were fixed on the purse as she prepared to harness its dark power. She had waited patiently for the right moment, and now, with the authentic accursed purse in her possession, her time had come. Lydia took a seat at the table and placed the purse in front of her. The room seemed to hold its breath as she unfastened the clasp, revealing the intricate interior of the purse. It was more than a mere accessory, it was a conduit to the infernal realm. Lydia knew that she could use it to manipulate those who had wronged her or crossed her path. She centering herself as she began the incantation she had learned through ancient texts and forbidden knowledge. Her voice was smooth and commanding as she recited the dark words, each syllable dripping with power. And by the shadows of desire, I call upon the forces within this vessel. Let its power be unleashed, and let my will be made manifest. As the air around the purse grew thick and charged with an otherworldly energy, the purse seemed to pulse with a dark rhythm, its presence magnified by Lydia's command. Shadows in the room twisted and danced, reacting to the sinister force being summoned. With an unearthly light as she continued her incantation, her fingers tracing arcane symbols in the air. The power of the purse was intoxicating, a tangible force that made her feel invincible. She could sense the subtle vibrations of the purse as it began to respond to her will. With a phrase, Lydia completed the incantation. The purse's power surged, and Lydia felt a rush of energy as if she had tapped into a deep well of darkness. The room seemed to vibrate with the intensity of the force she had unleashed. Lydia intoned, her voice echoing with the weight of her newfound power. Let the desires and fears of those I choose be bent to my will. The purse's power reached out, seeking out its victims. Lydia's thoughts turned to those who had wronged her, or whom she wished to manipulate. She envisioned their weaknesses, their desires, and their fears, knowing that the purse's influence would amplify her commands. Lydia's phone rang, breaking the stillness of the room. It was an update on the people she had targeted: Julian, Eliza, and Henry. Her eyes gleamed with satisfaction as she listened to the reports of their actions and reactions, knowing that her dark influence was taking hold. Julie frantically trying to locate the real purse, his desperation and paranoia growing by the hour. Eliza, on the other hand, was struggling with the guilt and remorse of her actions, her emotional state unraveling under the weight of her conscience. Henry, confined to his wheelchair, was reported to be consumed by his vengeful thoughts and fantasies about revenge. To a satisfied smile as she hung up the phone. The power of the purse was a potent tool, and she reveled in the knowledge that she had used it to shape the lives of those who had crossed her. Her influence was now a shadow over their lives, a reminder of the true extent of her control. As Lydia knew that her plans were unfolding perfectly. The purse's dark power had granted her the ability to manipulate and dominate, and she intended to use it to its fullest extent. The world was now her playground, and she was the master of its darkest desires. With a glance at the accursed purse, Lydia stood and walked away from the table. The room returned to its calm, opulent state, but the sinister energy lingered, a testament to the dark forces she had unleashed. Chapter 27. Visions of redemption and defiance. The sterile, dimly lit visiting room in the county jail was a far cry from the elegance of Eliza's former life. The harsh, buzzing fluorescent lights cast a cold, clinical glow over the room, illuminating the metal tables and plastic chairs that seemed to trap the somber atmosphere. Eliza, dressed in a simple yet refined outfit that contrasted sharply with the grim surroundings, sat on one side of the table, her hands folded nervously in her lap. Henry sat in his prison uniform, the once dignified man now appearing frail and disheveled behind the heavy metal bars that separated them. His face was lined with the stress of his confinement, and his eyes, though tired, burned with a fierce, defiant gleam. Before speaking, her voice carrying a mix of earnestness and concern. "Henry, we need to talk. We've both been touched by the darkness of that cursed purse, and I believe we need to seek forgiveness. We need to beg for absolution from God and renounce the dark influence of the purse." His chair, Henry, a sardonic smile curling his lips. "Forgiveness? Absolution?" he repeated, his tone dripping with disdain. "Eliza, you're wasting your time. You think a little plea to God is going to change anything? You don't understand what I've seen, what I've tasted." With a mix of frustration and pity. "But Henry, the purse, it's not real power. It's a tool of destruction, leading us all to ruin. You've seen what it's done. It's not worth clinging to." Arden, his gaze fixed intently on Eliza. "You don't get it. Once I'm out of this place, acquitted on self-defense thanks to my plea, I'm going to use that purse to get everything I've ever wanted. Every desire, every lustful fantasy. The world will be mine, and there's nothing you or anyone else can do to stop me." Eliza blushed with a mixture of anger and sadness. "Henry, do you hear yourself? You're letting that cursed thing control your every thought. It's consuming you. There's no happiness or fulfillment in that kind of greed. It will only lead to more pain and destruction." A cold, unyielding determination. "Pain and destruction? Maybe. But if I can get what I want in the end, it'll be worth it. The purse offers power, Eliza, power that I won't let slip away. You're just scared because you don't understand it." Eliza, her voice trembling. "I understand more than you think. I've seen what the purse can do, and it's not worth the price. It's not worth losing ourselves to darkness." Henwood, his gaze intense and unrelenting. "You talk about losing ourselves, but what about you, Eliza? You're the one who contributed to all of this. You threw a spark into a powder keg, and now you're trying to play the martyr. Face it, you're as much a part of this mess as I am." The word, and she struggled to maintain her composure. "I know I've made mistakes, I'm not denying that. But we both have a chance to make things right. We can seek forgiveness and turn away from the darkness." Henry, shaking his head. "Forgiveness? You're talking like a saint. I'm done with that. Once I'm free, I'm claiming what I've been promised. The purse's power is mine to command, and nothing you say will change that." Eliza with tears, and she reached out as if to bridge the gap between them. "Henry, please. Think about what you're saying. Think about the lives you're hurting, including your own." And momentarily, but only for a heartbeat. "I've made up my mind, Eliza. I don't need your pity or your pleas. When I'm out, I'll use the purse to get everything I've ever desired, and you won't be able to stop me." Eliza, her shoulders slumped in defeat. The harsh reality of Henry's resolve was a bitter pill to swallow. She knew her words had fallen on deaf ears. As the visiting time drew to a close, she rose from her chair, her heart heavy with the weight of her unfulfilled hopes. I'm looking for, Henry," she said softly, her voice breaking. "Because in the end, it's not the purse or the power, it's the choices we make that define us." With Eliza turned and walked away, leaving Henry behind in the cold confines of the prison visiting room. As the door closed behind her, she felt a profound sense of loss and helplessness, knowing that despite her best efforts, the darkness had taken its hold, and there was little she could do to change the course of events. Oh, his expression hex of defiance and anticipation. As the door shut, he allowed himself a moment of contemplation, his mind already racing with the possibilities that lay ahead. The purse was his, and once he was free, nothing would stand in his way. Chapter 28. The unrepentant defense. Henry's prison cell was as bleak as the rest of the facility, but today, a burst of manic energy gave it a strange sort of vibrancy. He paced back and forth, his wheelchair abandoned for the moment as he dragged himself across the narrow space, his mind racing with thoughts of the purse and his own self-righteousness. The rhythmic clinking of his chains was the only sound that accompanied his frenzied monologue. A weary middle-aged man named Gerald Haynes sat on a hard, uncomfortable chair opposite Henry's cell. Gerald was a seasoned lawyer, accustomed to the worst cases, but nothing could quite prepare him for the spectacle of Henry's current state. The lawyer watched with a mixture of concern and resignation as Henry launched into another tirade. "Coming, Gerald," Henry shouted, his voice echoing off the cold walls. "He dared to mock the purse, to insult my rightful claim to it. I was only defending myself, protecting my property from someone who was unworthy of its power. It was self-defense, plain and simple." Gerald glasses and sighed heavily. "Henry, you're not making this easy. You're looking at serious charges. The fact that Julian is dead complicates things immensely." Henry, his face flushed with indignation. "Complicates things? That's putting it lightly. What about the purse, Gerald? It was mine. It was a symbol of my power and my destiny. I had every right to use it as I saw fit. Julian's death was just a side effect of the purse's rightful return to me." Gerald rubbed his jaw, struggling to keep his patience. "Henry, I need you to understand something. From a legal standpoint, you need to show some remorse, some recognition of what happened. You can't just go around claiming it was self-defense when you're clearly obsessed with that cursed purse." With a scowl. "Obsessed? No, Gerald. I'm driven. The purse is a tool of power, and I'm going to use it to get what I want. Julian was an obstacle, and I removed him. It's as simple as that." Gerald, his expression becoming more earnest. "Henry, you're coming across as delusional. You need to consider pleading insanity. This manic behavior, your fixation on the purse, it's all pointing to a mental health issue. It might be your best chance at a reduced sentence, or even treatment." Immediate and he slammed his hand against the wall of his cell, the sound reverberating ominously. "Insanity? You think I'm insane?" "No, Gerald, I'm perfectly sane. I know exactly what I'm doing. I want a self-defense plea. I want my chance to explain that I was protecting what was rightfully mine." "Pardon, Henry, if you refuse to consider an insanity plea, you're going to face the full weight of the legal system. Your claims about the purse, your justification for killing Julian, it's not going to hold up in court. You're going to need a more compelling defense if you want to avoid a long prison sentence." Flushed with anger, his eyes blazing. "You're not listening to me. I don't need a plea of insanity. I need justice for what was done to me. The purse was taken from me, and I was forced to act. I will not be painted as a madman when I am simply a man defending his rightful possessions." Patience, wearing thin. "Henry, I'm trying to help you, but if you're not willing to work with me and acknowledge the reality of your situation, there's only so much I can do. The insanity plea could provide a way out, but if you're set on this self-defense story, You're going to face the consequences. His expression a mix of defiance and frustration.
I don't need your help if it means compromising my principles.
I know what I'm doing, and I won't back down. I'll fight this to the end if I have to. Gerald, shaking his head in resignation. Fine. If that's your choice, then we'll proceed with the self-defense plea. But don't expect any sympathy from the court. Your obsession with that purse will not be seen in a favorable light. Henry Dealey, as Gerald left the cell, he felt a surge of self-righteousness and determination. The purse had been his downfall, but it would also be his salvation, in his mind. He would not be swayed by the counsel of others. He would face the legal system with his own brand of justice. Henry sat back in his wheelchair, a grim smile playing on his lips. The wheels of justice were turning, and Henry was prepared to face whatever came next. His fixation on the purse remained unshaken, and he would continue to defend his actions, no matter the cost. Chapter 239. The Unholy Trial. The courtroom was thick with anticipation as the trial began. Henry, confined to his wheelchair and enveloped in casts, was the center of attention. His public defender, Gerald Haynes, looked on with growing apprehension as Henry took the stand. The jury, Henry began, his voice booming with a mix of desperation and fervor. I must insist that my actions against Julian were in self-defense. The purse. The man with a deeply furrowed brow interrupted with a sharp tone. Mr. Henry, if the purse is to be central to your defense, it must be produced for examination. Bailiff, present the item for the court to inspect. The woman with a no-nonsense demeanor rose from her seat. She walked to the courtroom door, and to everyone's surprise, removed her hat, revealing a dark wig and a carefully applied disguise. Underneath the facade, Lydia Nightshade's face was illuminated by a sinister smile. She carried the purse with a deceptive air of casual elegance. Judge Lydia's bench, her movements deliberate and composed. She laid the purse on the table before the judge, her eyes gleaming with malicious satisfaction. The judge, with a mix of curiosity and apprehension, let us see this purse for ourselves. The clasp of the purse, an eerie chill swept through the room. Shadows began to swirl and coil from within the purse, manifesting into a dark, swirling vortex. The courtroom gasped collectively, their faces turning pale as the sinister display unfolded. Henry in a mix of awe and terror. He had heard about the purse's power but had never witnessed it in such a dramatic, horrifying fashion. The spectral entities seemed to writhe and twist, filling the room with an otherworldly darkness. They stood back in fear, their voices rising in a chaotic symphony of terror. The jury was visibly shaken, their expressions reflecting the profound shock and fear elicited by the dark spectacle. To maintain control, bellowed, "Order in the court, bailiff, close the purse immediately." Lydia, with a look of grim satisfaction, complied swiftly. She snapped the purse shut, causing the swirling shadows to dissipate, and the room began to calm as the darkness retreated. "Mr. Henry," the judge said, his voice heavy with authority and a tinge of fear, "the court has witnessed the true nature of the object in question. This revelation only underscores the gravity of your actions and the implausibility of your claim." Henry's silence, his earlier confidence replaced by a dawning realization of the purse's terrifying power. The courtroom buzzed with whispers and conjecture as the reality of the purse's dark magic became undeniable. Action was palpable as she exited the courtroom. She had orchestrated the dramatic reveal to ensure the purse's malevolent influence could no longer be dismissed or ignored. Her plan had succeeded in showcasing the purse's dark power in a manner that left a profound impact on all who witnessed it. As the trial continued, the shadow of the accursed purse loomed larger than ever, its dark influence casting a long and unsettling shadow over the proceedings.